She died at age 6. Her funeral was held. Her name was carved into a memorial wall. But when both pilots collapsed at 38,000 feet, an 11-year-old girl walked to the cockpit and spoke 2 words that made F-22 fighters freeze mid-flight: Ghost Rider. The dead had returned. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Ava Morrison sits in seat 14C, middle seat, economy class, on United Airlines Flight 892. She is 11 years old, small for her age, with dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail. Her clothes are worn but clean, hand-me-downs that Uncle James bought from thrift stores. Her backpack rests at her feet, containing everything she owns in the world: 3 changes of clothes, a photo of a woman in a flight suit, and a small wooden box holding ashes. The businessman in 14B barely glances at her as he opens his laptop. The woman in 14A offers a kind smile and a piece of candy. "Traveling alone, sweetie?" she asks with maternal warmth. Ava nods, accepting the candy politely. "Yes, ma'am. Visiting family." The lie comes easily now. 5 years of staying hidden, 5 years of being nobody, have taught her how to blend into the background. She's just another unaccompanied minor, probably going to see her dad or grandparents, requiring the extra attention flight attendants give to children traveling alone. The flight attendant stops by, checking her paperwork, smiling with professional kindness. "You doing okay, honey? Need anything before we take off?" "I'm fine, thank you." Nobody sees what she carries inside. Nobody knows what she can do. Nobody suspects that the quiet girl in the middle seat has spent 5 years learning things that most adults will never master. Flight 892 pushes back from the gate at Los Angeles International at 2:47 p.m. Boeing 777, capable of carrying 368 passengers, today loaded with 298 passengers and 14 crew. A routine afternoon flight to Washington Dulles. Clear skies, light winds, perfect flying weather. As the aircraft taxis toward the runway, Ava closes her eyes and does what Uncle James taught her: she runs through the aircraft systems in her mind. Boeing 777, 2 turbofan engines, fly-by-wire controls, advanced autopilot systems, redundant hydraulics. Takeoff speed approximately 160 knots depending on weight. Rotation at V2 plus 10. Climb to cruising altitude 38,000 feet. She knows these things the way other children know their favorite songs. The businessman beside her doesn't notice her lips moving silently, doesn't see her fingers twitching slightly as she mimics control movements. He's already absorbed in his spreadsheets, part of the anonymous mass of humanity that fills aircraft every day, trusting their lives to pilots they'll never meet. The engines spool up. The aircraft accelerates down the runway. Ava feels the familiar push against her seat back, the moment when wheels leave ground, the angle of climb. She's felt this hundreds of times, but always with a bittersweet ache. Her mother loved this moment most. "The moment we leave the earth," Captain Sarah Morrison used to say, "we're free. We're flying." Ava opens her eyes as Los Angeles falls away beneath them. Somewhere in the distant mountains where the city ends, there's a crash site she's never seen. A place where her mother died saving her. A place where, according to every official record, Ava herself died too. She's been dead for 5 years. A ghost. A girl who doesn't exist. She touches the small wooden box in her backpack. Uncle James had wanted his ashes scattered at the Air Force Memorial in Washington, among the names of the fallen. He'd served 30 years, flown combat missions, commanded squadrons. But his last 5 years had been spent on a different mission, raising a dead girl, keeping her hidden, teaching her everything her mother knew. "Why did you keep me secret?" she'd asked him once, maybe 2 years ago. They'd been in his workshop, the converted barn where he'd built a flight simulator from salvaged parts and encyclopedic knowledge. She was practicing approaches, her small hands on controls he'd modified to fit her size. Uncle James had paused the simulator, turned to look at her with those serious eyes that saw too much. Your mother's crash wasn't an accident, Ava. Someone sabotaged that aircraft. Someone wanted Ghost Rider dead. The words had chilled her. Who? We never found out. The investigation went classified. But I knew Sarah Morrison, she was the best combat pilot I ever flew with. Foreign intelligence agencies feared her. She'd outflown enemy aircraft that should have killed her. Shot down planes that had better weapons, better technology. She won because she was that good. He'd touched her shoulder gently. If her enemies knew her daughter survived, you'd be leverage. A target. They'd use you to hurt the programs she worked on, the missions she flew. So I made a choice, I kept you dead. Reported finding an unidentified child to social services, used an old favor to become your guardian under a false name. You've been Emma Sullivan for 5 years. Safe. Hidden. But why teach me everything? Ava had asked. If I'm supposed to stay hidden, why make me learn all this? Uncle James had smiled then, sad and proud at once. Because your mother died trying to teach you. Because she wanted you to love flying the way she did. And because. He'd paused, choosing words carefully. Because the best way to honor someone isn't to hide from what they were. It's to carry forward what they loved. Your mother was Ghost Rider, one of the greatest pilots who ever lived. That legacy shouldn't die because evil people wanted it dead. Now Uncle James himself is dead, and Ava is traveling under her real name for the first time in 5 years. His final arrangements had required it, his lawyer had discovered the truth, helped cut through the legal maze. Emma Sullivan had never truly existed in the legal sense, Ava Morrison had only been presumed dead, never officially declared dead beyond military records. The resurrection had been surprisingly simple on paper. But it meant stepping into the light. Being seen. Being real again. It terrifies her. Flight 892 levels off at cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign dings off. The cabin settles into the familiar routine of a long flight, people reading, sleeping, watching movies on seatback screens. Normal. Safe. Boring in the way that flying has become for most people. Ava pulls out her mother's photo. It's worn at the edges from 5 years of handling. Captain Sarah, Ghost Rider, Morrison in full flight suit, standing in front of an F-22 Raptor, helmet tucked under one arm, the faintest smile on her face. She looks invincible in this photo. Confident. Alive. The woman in 14A notices, leans over kindly. Is that your mom? Ava nods. She's beautiful. What does she do? She was a pilot, Ava says softly. She died. The woman's expression melts into sympathy. Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. It's okay, Ava says, because that's what people expect to hear. What they want to hear. It was a long time ago. 5 years. An eternity when you're 11. Half her life spent learning from a ghost, trained by a guardian who knew her mother's secrets, preparing for a future she couldn't imagine. Uncle James had made her promise something before he died, in those final days when the cancer had hollowed him out but his eyes remained sharp and clear. Ava, he'd said, his voice barely a whisper, I taught you everything because I believed you needed to know. Not because I thought you'd become a pilot, you're too young for that. But because knowledge is power, and understanding is strength. Your mother's skills, her techniques, her way of thinking, I gave them to you as a gift. He'd gripped her hand with surprising strength. But here's what you need to understand, if you're ever in a situation where lives depend on what I taught you, if the universe somehow puts you in a position where only you can help, don't be afraid. Don't let being young stop you. Don't let being dead stop you. Your mother saved you once by being brave enough to do the impossible. If you ever need to do the same, be her daughter. Be Ghost Rider. At the time, she'd thought it was just the rambling of a dying man trying to give meaning to his final years. What situation could possibly require an 11-year-old to use advanced flight training? Now, at 38,000 feet above Middle America, Ava Morrison has no idea that in 12 minutes, the impossible is going to require exactly that. The first sign comes at 3:47 p.m., 43 minutes into the flight. In the cockpit of Flight 892, Captain Michael Torres begins to feel dizzy. The sensation is subtle at first, just a slight lightheadedness, like standing up too quickly. He blinks, shakes his head slightly, trying to clear it. "You okay?" First Officer Jennifer Park asks, glancing over at him. "Yeah, just, felt weird for a second." He checks the instruments out of habit. "Everything normal?" "Autopilot engaged, systems green, weather clear ahead." They're over Kansas now, following the airways eastward, utterly routine. But the dizziness doesn't pass. It intensifies. Captain Torres feels his thoughts becoming sluggish, his vision starting to blur at the edges. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong. "Jenny, I'm not feeling." First Officer Park turns to look at him and sees immediately that something is desperately wrong. His face has gone pale, his eyes unfocused. "Mike? Mike, what's?" Then she feels it too. The sudden wave of disorientation, the crushing fatigue, the sense that her body is shutting down. Her hands fumble at the controls, trying to key the radio, trying to declare an emergency, but her coordination is failing. Carbon monoxide. An odorless, invisible killer, leaking from a faulty maintenance seal in the environmental system. Both pilots breathing it for 40 minutes, their bodies slowly poisoned, their brains starved of oxygen. Captain Torres slumps forward against his harness. First Officer Park manages to trigger the cockpit door alert, a desperate final action, before she collapses sideways in her seat. In the cabin, everything seems normal for another 60 seconds. Passengers read, sleep, chat. The flight attendants prepare the drink service. A baby cries in row 23. Someone laughs at a movie in row 31. Then the lead flight attendant, Marcus Chen, 20-year veteran, notices the cockpit alert on his panel. It's not the normal call button, it's the emergency signal that pilots can trigger with a foot switch if they need immediate help but can't leave the controls. He moves quickly but calmly to the cockpit door, knocks in the specific pattern that identifies crew, enters his access code. The door opens. Both pilots are unconscious. For a moment, maybe 2 seconds, Marcus Chen's mind simply refuses to process what he's seeing. Both pilots down. Both unresponsive. It's supposed to be impossible. Commercial aviation has redundancy built on redundancy specifically to prevent this scenario. But impossible or not, it's happening. His training kicks in. He keys his intercom to the other flight attendants, code blue in cockpit. Both pilots down. Medical emergency. Initiate emergency protocols. The other attendants hear the tension in his voice and move immediately. One goes to get the emergency medical kit and portable oxygen. Another starts checking for medical professionals among passengers. The third prepares to make an announcement that no flight attendant ever wants to make. Marcus tries to rouse the pilots. Captain Torres has a pulse, is breathing, but is completely unresponsive. First Officer Park the same. He administers oxygen from the emergency supply, but neither pilot shows any sign of waking. The aircraft continues to fly straight and level at 38,000 feet. The autopilot is holding course, altitude, speed. But autopilot can't handle what comes next. Autopilot can't deal with weather deviations, traffic conflicts, or landing. Autopilot can keep them flying until the fuel runs out, and then everyone dies anyway. The announcement goes out over the cabin PA, spoken by Senior Flight Attendant Lisa Rodriguez, her voice controlled but unable to hide the underlying urgency. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a medical emergency. Both of our pilots have become incapacitated. We need to know immediately if there is anyone on board with flight experience. Any pilots, military aviators, or anyone with experience flying aircraft. Please identify yourself to the nearest flight attendant immediately. The effect is instantaneous and terrible. The cabin erupts. Not with screams at first, but with a collective gasp, the sound of 298 people simultaneously understanding that they might be about to die. Then the panic starts. Crying. Praying. People grabbing their phones to call loved ones, to say goodbye. The businessman in 14B stops typing mid-sentence, his face going white. The woman in 14A starts crying silently, hands shaking as she reaches for her phone. Flight attendants move through the cabin quickly but find no one. A retired Air Force mechanic in row 7, no, he never flew, only maintained. A teenage boy who plays flight simulator games, no, that's not even close to sufficient. A woman who took flying lessons 15 years ago and never finished, no, she's too terrified and unpracticed. Nobody. In a cabin of 298 passengers, not a single qualified pilot. The aircraft flies on, automated but doomed. The flight attendants reconvene in the forward galley, their faces showing the fear they're trying to hide from passengers. Air traffic control, one asks. I'm trying, Marcus says, holding a phone to the cockpit. They're clearing airspace around us, scrambling resources, but unless we have someone who can fly this plane. He doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. In seat 14C, Ava Morrison sits frozen. Her mind is racing through calculations, through 5 years of training, through every procedure Uncle James ever taught her. Boeing 777. She knows the systems. She's studied the manuals. She's flown it in simulator, hundreds of hours in Uncle James's workshop, his voice guiding her through emergencies just like this. But that was simulation. This is real. Real lives. Real aircraft. Real consequences. She's 11 years old. She's never actually flown a real plane. She's been dead for 5 years, and revealing herself means answering questions she can't fully answer. Questions about where she's been, who raised her, why she was hidden. But 312 people are going to die. She thinks of her mother, who saw the aircraft failing and made a choice in seconds, eject her daughter, sacrifice herself. No hesitation. Just action. She thinks of Uncle James, who spent his final 5 years teaching her, preparing her, giving her a gift she didn't understand. If lives depend on it, be Ghost Rider. She thinks of that photo in her backpack, Captain Sarah Morrison standing in front of an F-22, looking invincible. Ava unbuckles her seatbelt and stands. The woman in 14A looks at her with tear-streaked face. Sweetie, please sit down, put your belt on. Ava doesn't respond. She walks down the aisle toward the front of the cabin, a tiny 11-year-old girl moving through chaos with purpose that doesn't make sense. Lisa Rodriguez sees her coming and intercepts her gently. Honey, please return to your seat. I know this is scary, but I can fly, Ava says quietly. Lisa stares at her. What? I can fly the plane. I know how. The flight attendant's expression shifts through disbelief, confusion, desperation. Honey, this isn't a game. We need an actual pilot. My mother was Captain Sarah Morrison, call sign Ghost Rider. She was an F-22 Raptor pilot. She taught me to fly before she died. I've been training for 5 years. I know Boeing 777 systems. I know emergency procedures. I can do this. There's something in the child's voice that stops Lisa from dismissing her outright. Authority that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Certainty that seems impossible but sounds absolutely real. Marcus appears from the cockpit, here's the last part. What's going on? Lisa looks at him, looks at Ava, makes a decision born of pure desperation. She says she can fly. Marcus looks down at the 11-year-old girl and sees something that makes no sense but also makes perfect sense in this moment of utter impossibility, a child who isn't panicking, who is speaking with technical precision, who is offering the only hope they have. "What's your name?" he asks. "Ava Morrison. My mother was Ghost Rider. She died 5 years ago saving me in a crash. I was declared dead too. But I survived. And the man who saved me, Colonel James Sullivan, he taught me everything my mother knew. I've studied for 5 years. I can fly this aircraft." Marcus makes the fastest decision of his life. They have no other option. No time. No choice. "Come with me." The cockpit of Flight 892 is both familiar and utterly alien to Ava. Familiar because she's seen it 1,000 times in manuals, in videos, in detailed schematics that Uncle James made her study until she could identify every switch and dial with her eyes closed. Alien because it's real. The controls are real. The instruments showing real altitude, real airspeed, real systems are live and active. The 2 unconscious pilots slumped in their seats are real. This isn't simulation anymore. Marcus and Lisa carefully move First Officer Park from the right seat, laying her in the space behind the cockpit. Ava climbs into the captain's chair, too small for it, feet barely reaching the rudder pedals even when the seat is moved fully forward. She's so tiny in that seat, so impossibly young. But her hands know where everything is. She scans the instruments exactly as Uncle James taught her. Airspeed stable at 482 knots. Altitude holding at 38,000 feet. Autopilot engaged. Fuel showing 42,000 pounds remaining, enough for 2 more hours. Weather radar clear ahead. The aircraft is flying itself, but it won't land itself. Not safely. Not with 312 lives depending on it. Marcus stands behind her, phone in hand connected to air traffic control. They need to know who's flying now. Ava reaches for the radio control panel, fingers moving with practiced precision despite her racing heart. She finds the transmit button, takes a breath, and keys the mic. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is United 892. Both pilots incapacitated due to medical emergency. I am taking control of the aircraft." The response is immediate. United 892, Kansas City Center. Confirm your status. Who is flying the aircraft? What is your qualification? Ava's finger hovers over the transmit button. In this moment, she's about to speak words that will resurrect a ghost, that will reveal a secret kept for 5 years, that will change everything. She presses the button and speaks with her mother's certainty. "This is Ghost Rider." The radio goes silent. Complete silence that stretches for 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then a different voice, sharp with shock, "Say again your call sign." "Confirm." "Ghost Rider," Ava repeats. Her voice is steady despite the fear. "I'm 11 years old. My mother was Captain Sarah Morrison, F-22 Raptor pilot, call sign Ghost Rider. She died 5 years ago saving me from a crash. I was declared dead too. But I survived. Colonel James Sullivan kept me hidden and trained me for 5 years. I've never flown a real aircraft, but I know how. I know Boeing 777 systems. I know emergency procedures. I need help landing this plane." The silence that follows is different now, not confusion but pure shock rippling through every frequency. 53 miles away, 2 F-22 Raptors on routine air sovereignty patrol over Missouri freeze in their cockpits. The lead pilot, call sign Viper, keys his radio with a voice that carries something between disbelief and awe. "Kansas City, this is Viper flight. Did we just hear correctly? Did someone say Ghost Rider?" "Affirmative, Viper." "Stand by." Viper's wingman, call sign Reaper 2, breaks in with urgency. "Center, this is Reaper 2. I flew with Sarah Morrison. Ghost Rider has been retired for 5 years. That call sign went down with her. What the hell is happening? Ava's voice comes back, small but clear. Colonel, is that Reaper 2? Is that you? A pause. Affirmative. Who is this? This is Ava Morrison. I met you once when I was 6. You came to our house for dinner. You and my mom were squadron mates. You told me stories about flying. Another pause, longer this time. When Reaper 2 speaks again, his voice is rough with emotion. Ava. Little Ava Morrison. You're alive. Yes, sir. Uncle James, Colonel Sullivan, he saved me from the crash. He kept me hidden. He taught me everything Mom knew. He died 2 weeks ago. I'm carrying his ashes to Washington when this happened. Jesus Christ. James Sullivan. He told me once he'd found a child the day Sarah died. He said it was an unidentified girl he'd reported to social services. I never knew. I never imagined. Viper cuts in, his tactical mind engaging even through shock. Center, Viper flight is diverting to intercept United 892. Reaper 2, you're with me. Damn right I am. That's Ghost Rider's daughter up there. Air traffic control, Viper flight, cleared to intercept and escort United 892. All traffic is being cleared from the area. Emergency services are being scrambled to all airports along their route. The F-22s bank hard, afterburners lighting, accelerating to supersonic speed. These are some of the most advanced fighters ever built, capable of things that seem to defy physics. Right now, they're racing to escort a civilian aircraft piloted by an 11-year-old girl who shouldn't exist. In the cockpit, Marcus stares at Ava with an expression that mixes terror and wonder. You're really going to do this? Ava looks at the instruments, at the controls, at the responsibility in front of her. I don't have a choice. Neither do you. She keys the radio again. Kansas City Center, United 892. I need to know fuel requirements for landing, weather at nearest suitable airports, and emergency protocols for Boeing 777 with novice pilot. Her technical language surprises the controllers. United 892, nearest suitable airport is Kansas City International, 120 miles ahead. Weather is clear, winds light and variable. We're coordinating emergency response now. Reaper 2's voice, Ava, this is Reaper 2. I'm going to be with you every step of the way. Your mother taught you her pre-flight ritual. Yes, sir. Touch the wing, say, fly safe, come home, draw infinity in the air. That's right. And do you know why she drew infinity? She said flying is forever if you honor it. That's my Ghost Rider. His voice breaks slightly. She'd be so proud of you right now. Now, let's bring you home. First thing, I need you to verify you're comfortable with the autopilot controls. For the next 20 minutes, Reaper 2 walks Ava through every system check, every control verification. His voice is calm, professional, but underneath it is emotion that he can't quite hide. He's talking to a ghost, a child who died 5 years ago, the daughter of his closest friend, speaking with knowledge that shouldn't exist. The F-22s arrive, pulling alongside Flight 892 in tight formation. Through the cockpit window, Ava can see them, sleek, lethal, beautiful aircraft, the pinnacle of fighter design. Her mother flew these. Her mother was one of the absolute best. Viper's voice, United 892, we have visual on you. Aircraft appears stable and under control. Ava responds, Roger, Viper. Autopilot engaged, systems nominal. But I need help with the approach and landing. I've only done this in simulation. Reaper 2, simulations James built for you? Yes, sir. He built a full cockpit in his workshop. I've flown hundreds of hours. Then you're more prepared than you think. James Sullivan was one of the finest pilots I ever knew. If he taught you, You learn from the best. Behind Ava, the senior flight attendants have been working frantically. They've moved both unconscious pilots to the cabin, where emergency-trained passengers are monitoring their vitals. They've found portable oxygen tanks and pure air, trying to clear the carbon monoxide from the pilot's systems. But neither pilot is showing signs of waking, and time is running out. Marcus leans over Ava's seat. The passengers are terrified. Should I tell them what's happening? Ava considers. Tell them the truth. Someone is flying the plane who knows how. Tell them we're being escorted by military fighters. Tell them we're going to land safely. Lisa Rodriguez makes the announcement, her voice projecting strength she doesn't quite feel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your senior flight attendant. We have someone flying the aircraft who has training and is being guided by military pilots. We are being escorted by F-22 fighters and are proceeding to Kansas City International Airport for emergency landing. Please remain calm and follow all crew instructions. The cabin is a mix of terror and surreal hope. People crane to see out windows, catching glimpses of the F-22's information. Fighter jets don't escort commercial flights unless something extraordinary is happening. In the cockpit, Ava is working through descent procedures with Reaper 2's guidance. Ava, you're going to start descent soon. I want you to use your mother's technique for this. Do you remember the Ghost Rider descent profile? Gradual descent, 1,500 feet per minute, maintain speed control through pitch and power, stabilize at each altitude before continuing. Perfect. That's exactly right. Your mother developed that technique because it gives maximum control and stability. We're going to use it now. The descent begins. Ava disengages the autopilot altitude hold and manually inputs descent rate. Her small hands are precise on the controls, movements deliberate and careful. The aircraft begins sinking smoothly from cruise altitude. Behind her, Marcus watches in amazement as this tiny child manages the descent with a smoothness that seems professional. Reaper 2 continues coaching, airspeed control, Ava. Watch your speed. Too fast and you'll overstress the aircraft. Too slow and you'll stall. Maintaining 290 knots in descent. Monitoring airspeed, altitude, vertical speed. Good. You sound just like her, you know. Same calm. Same precision. The F-22s maintain formation, adjusting their speed to match the descending 777. They're not just escort now, they're guardians, two of the world's most advanced fighters protecting a civilian aircraft piloted by a child who shouldn't exist. On military frequencies, word is spreading like wildfire. Ghost Rider's daughter is alive. Ghost Rider's daughter is flying a civilian aircraft in emergency. Fighter pilots who flew with Sarah Morrison are calling in, offering help, asking if it's really true. At Kansas City International, the airport is transforming into an emergency response center. Fire trucks positioning. Ambulances standing by. Foam trucks ready in case of crash landing. But also something unusual, Air Force officers arriving, military brass coordinating, because this isn't just an emergency anymore. This is the resurrection of a legend. Through descent, approach, and initial landing preparation, Reaper 2 guides Ava through every step. His voice is constant, reassuring, professional. He's not just coaching a novice, he's honoring his fallen wingman by keeping her daughter safe. At 10,000 feet, Ava calls for landing checklist. Marcus reads from the quick reference guide they've pulled up, and Ava works through each item methodically. Landing gear, Reaper 2 prompts. Ava finds the gear lever, moves it to down position. 3 green lights illuminate, nose gear down and locked, left main gear down and locked, right main gear down and locked. 3 green, she reports. Beautiful. Flaps next. Extension should be gradual. Start with flaps 5. The aircraft configuration changes as systems deploy. Ava feels the drag increase, adjusts power to compensate. Everything Uncle James taught her is flooding back, Not just procedures but the feel of flying, the intuitive understanding that he'd worked so hard to give her. At 5,000 feet, Kansas City International is visible ahead. Runway 01L has been cleared, emergency vehicles staged. Approach lighting is on full bright, a clear path to safety or disaster. Ava, Reaper 2 says gently, your mother would land with full flaps, full control, and absolute confidence. You have all of that. This landing is going to be perfect because you're Ghost Rider's daughter, and flying is in your blood. I'm scared, Ava admits, her first admission of fear. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Your mother was scared every time she flew combat, she just never let it control her. Feel the fear and fly anyway. At 3,000 feet, approach control vectors them onto final approach. The runway is aligned perfectly ahead, a gray strip surrounded by green fields. Salvation if she can reach it. Death if she can't. Airspeed 180 knots. Descent rate 700 feet per minute. On glide slope, Ava reports. Perfect, Ava. Keep it steady. Small corrections. Don't overcorrect. At 1,000 feet, the aircraft crosses the threshold markers. Ava can see emergency vehicles lining the taxiways, see people watching, see the enormity of what she's attempting. 500 feet, Reaper 2 calls. You're doing great. Stay with it. 400 feet. Airspeed good. 300 feet. Looking good. Start thinking about the flare. 200 feet. Prepared for flare. 100 feet. Begin flare now. Gentle back pressure. Let the mains touch first. Ava pulls back gently on the yoke. The nose rises slightly. The ground rushes up. This is the moment, everything depends on this. The main landing gear touches with a hard thump, not perfect but acceptable. The aircraft bounces slightly, settles again. Ava pushes forward on the yoke to bring the nose down. The nose gear touches. They're on the ground. Thrust reversers, now. Reaper 2 commands. Ava pulls the thrust reverser levers. The engines roar, decelerating the aircraft. She applies brakes carefully, feeling for the edge of control. The 777 slows, slows, slows. Rolling past emergency vehicles, past fire trucks, past crowds of people watching the impossible unfold. Finally, impossibly, the aircraft slows to taxi speed. United 892, you are safely on the ground, Kansas City Tower reports, and there's emotion in the controller's voice. In the cockpit, Ava's hands are shaking now, adrenaline hitting. She's done it. She's actually done it. Outside, the two F-22s scream overhead at low altitude, pulling up into a vertical climb, the missing man formation, the aerial salute given to fallen pilots. But this time, it's not for someone who died. It's for Ghost Rider returned. The cockpit door opens and Marcus steps in, seeing Ava still strapped into the captain's seat, hands trembling with aftershock. You did it, he says, and his voice breaks. You actually did it. Emergency vehicles surround the aircraft now. Medical teams board immediately to attend to the unconscious pilots. Both are stabilized and transported to the hospital, where they'll make full recoveries after carbon monoxide treatment. But the focus is on Seat the Captain's seat, where an 11-year-old girl just performed the impossible. Ava unbuckles and climbs down from the seat on shaking legs. Lisa Rodriguez appears and simply wraps her in a hug, no words, just pure emotional reaction to witnessing a miracle. The passengers are deplaning through emergency exits, and as they emerge they're talking, crying, calling loved ones. A child saved us, people are saying. An 11-year-old girl landed the plane. The F-22s have landed and taxied to a remote area of the airport. Reaper 2 climbs out of his cockpit, removes his helmet, and starts walking toward the United aircraft with purpose. Airport authority tries to stop him. This is a civilian area, military aircraft don't just. He shows his credentials. That's my wingman's daughter up there. I flew with Ghost Rider for 12 years. I need to see her. They let him through. When Ava emerges from the aircraft, escorted by flight crew, she sees him approaching, a man in full flight suit, gray-haired now, tears streaming down his face openly. Ava Morrison, he says, stopping in front of her. Do you remember me? She looks at him, memory stirring. You came to dinner. You brought me a toy airplane. You told Mom you'd fly her wing anywhere. That's right. His voice is rough. And I thought I lost you both. I went to the memorial service. I saw your names on the wall. And now you're here, alive, and you just saved 312 people using your mother's techniques. He drops to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level, and salutes her. A formal military salute from a decorated fighter pilot to an 11-year-old girl. Welcome back from the dead, Ghost Rider. Ava starts crying then, 5 years of being hidden, 5 years of being nobody, 5 years of carrying a legacy she couldn't reveal, all breaking at once. Reaper 2 opens his arms and she falls into them, sobbing. I was so scared, she says. I didn't know if I could do it. You did it, he says. Your mother would be so proud. James would be so proud. Hell, I'm proud, and I barely know you. But I knew your mother, and I see her in everything you just did up there. The media arrives within minutes, news helicopters circling, cameras capturing everything. The story is already breaking worldwide. Child declared dead 5 years ago saves 312 lives. Ghost Rider's daughter returns from the grave. 11-year-old pilot performs miracle landing. But before the full media storm can descend, military personnel arrive and quietly establish a perimeter. This isn't just a feel-good news story, this is a classified situation that needs careful handling. A child who was declared dead after a suspected sabotage attack has suddenly reappeared. Questions need answering. Security needs assessing. A black SUV pulls up and a woman in civilian clothes but with unmistakable military bearing steps out. She's followed by 2 men in suits, intelligence services, clearly. She approaches Ava, who is still standing with Reaper 2, and stops a respectful distance away. Ava Morrison, I'm Colonel Patricia Hayes, Air Force Special Investigations. We need to talk about what happened 5 years ago, and what's been happening since. Reaper 2 steps slightly in front of Ava, protective. She just saved over 300 lives after being declared dead for 5 years. Maybe give her a moment. Colonel Hayes nods. I understand. But this is bigger than one emergency landing. If Ava was kept hidden because of security concerns around her mother's death, we need to assess whether those concerns still exist. We need to know who knew she was alive, who trained her, and why Colonel Sullivan never came forward. Ava speaks up, her voice still shaky but clear. Uncle James kept me hidden because Mom's crash wasn't an accident. He said someone sabotaged the plane. He said if enemies knew I survived, I'd be in danger. He was right to be concerned, Colonel Hayes says, her expression softening. Your mother's death was investigated at the highest levels. We suspected foreign intelligence involvement but could never prove it. Keeping you hidden was probably the safest choice. And now? Reaper 2 asks. Now she's very publicly alive. Which means we need to ensure her safety going forward. Hayes looks at Ava with something like respect. You just demonstrated skills that a child your age shouldn't have. That's going to raise questions, attract attention. Some of it good. Some of it potentially dangerous. Over the next 3 hours, Ava is debriefed, not interrogated, but carefully questioned by people who understand the sensitivity of the situation. She tells them everything, the crash, wandering through the wilderness, being found by Colonel Sullivan, the decision to keep her dead, 5 years of training in his mountain workshop. They verify everything through Colonel Sullivan's estate. His lawyer provides documentation, journals detailing his guardianship, training logs showing what he taught Ava, even videos of her simulator sessions. It's all there, a paper trail of a man who dedicated his final years to keeping a promise to a fallen comrade. The investigation uncovers the carbon monoxide leak on Flight 892, a maintenance error, nothing malicious. Both pilots make full recoveries. But the larger question remains, what happens to Ava Morrison now? DNA testing confirms her identity beyond any doubt. She is legally resurrected, no longer officially dead, her records corrected. But she has no living relatives, no guardian now that Colonel Sullivan has passed. Reaper 2, whose real name is Colonel Marcus Reed, steps forward. I'll take her. Sarah Morrison was my wingman, my friend. I should have been there for her daughter 5 years ago. I can be there now. The paperwork takes weeks, but eventually it's approved. Ava Morrison, officially returned from the dead, moves in with Colonel Reed and his family in Virginia, a wife who welcomes her with open arms, 2 teenage children who think having a heroic little sister is the coolest thing ever. But before all that, there's something Ava needs to do. 6 days after the emergency landing, Ava stands at the Air Force Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. It's a crisp morning, the sun bright overhead. The memorial's 3 steel spires rise into the sky like contrails, a tribute to Air Force service members who gave their lives. She carries the wooden box containing Uncle James's ashes. Around her stands an honor guard, not because protocol requires it, but because word spread among the Air Force community. Veterans who flew with Colonel Sullivan. Pilots who served with Captain Morrison. Dozens of people who heard the story and wanted to be present for this moment. Reaper 2 stands beside her in full dress uniform. Viper is there too, along with other pilots from the F-22 squadrons. There are generals present, colonels, enlisted personnel. All here for a little girl who brought a legend back to life. Ava approaches the memorial wall where names are engraved. She finds her mother's name, Captain Sarah, Ghost Rider, Morrison. The letters are carved deep into stone, meant to last forever. She touches the name with small fingers. Hi, Mom. I made it. Uncle James taught me everything you wanted me to learn. I hope I made you proud. She opens the wooden box and carefully scatters Colonel Sullivan's ashes at the base of the memorial, among the names of the fallen. Thank you, Uncle James. For saving me. For teaching me. For keeping your promise to Mom. The honor guard stands at attention. A bugler plays taps, the haunting notes echoing across the memorial grounds. When the ceremony ends, a 3-star general approaches Ava. General Robert Chen, commander of Air Combat Command, a man who flew alongside her mother decades ago. Ava Morrison, he says formally, your mother was one of the finest combat pilots this nation has ever produced. Her call sign, Ghost Rider, was retired out of respect when she died. But call signs aren't just names, they're legacies. They're meant to be earned and carried forward. He holds out a flight patch, the same patch her mother wore, with Ghost Rider embroidered in silver thread. This belonged to your mother. And now, with your actions, you've proven you're worthy to carry it forward. The call sign Ghost Rider is no longer retired. It's yours, when you're ready to claim it. Ava takes the patch with trembling hands, holding the physical piece of her mother's legacy. I'm 11, she says quietly. I can't even get a pilot's license for years. General Chen smiles. No, you can't. But we have programs for young people who show exceptional aptitude. The Air Force Youth Aviation Academy. Advanced training courses. When you turn 16, you can start formal flight training. When you turn 18, if you choose, you can apply to the Air Force Academy. He kneels down, meeting her eyes. Your mother didn't just want you to survive, Ava. She wanted you to soar. Take your time. Grow up. Live your life. But know that when you're ready, there's a place for you. There's a legacy waiting. The Air Force Youth Aviation Academy occupies a sprawling facility at Joint Base Andrews. It's an elite program, only 200 students nationwide, selected for exceptional aptitude and potential. Most students are 16 or 17, preparing for military service or civilian aviation careers. Ava Morrison, at 11 years and 7 months old, is the youngest person ever enrolled. She walks through the facility on her first day, wearing a flight suit that had to be specially tailored to fit someone her size. Other students stare, some with curiosity, some with skepticism, all of them having heard the story. That's the girl who landed the 777. That's Ghost Rider's daughter. That's the kid who was dead for 5 years. Her instructor meets her in the briefing room. Colonel Marcus Reed, Reaper 2, who pulled strings to ensure he could teach her officially, not just as a guardian but as her formal flight instructor. "You ready for this?" he asks. "I think so," Ava says. "It's just, everyone's staring. They're staring because you did something impossible. You'll get used to it." He hands her a flight manual. "But here's what you need to understand, what you did in that emergency was extraordinary. But it doesn't make you a pilot yet. That took desperation and courage. Being a pilot takes knowledge, discipline, and time. You've got a head start, but you've still got years of learning ahead." "I know," Ava says. "Uncle James told me the same thing. He said flying once doesn't make you a pilot any more than cooking once makes you a chef." Reaper 2 smiles. James was wise. "All right, then. Let's begin. The first months are grueling. Ground school, aerodynamics, meteorology, regulations, navigation." Ava is surrounded by teenagers twice her age, all of them competitive, driven. Some resent her presence, think she's there only because of her famous mother and her dramatic rescue. She proves them wrong through sheer dedication. She studies harder than anyone. She asks questions that show deep understanding. She demonstrates knowledge that shocks even the instructors. When they finally get into actual flight training, small single-engine aircraft, not simulators, Ava is nervous all over again. This is different from the emergency landing. This is learning properly, from the beginning, building skills correctly. Her first takeoff is shaky. Her first landing is rough. She makes mistakes, overcorrects, struggles with things that should be simple. After a particularly frustrating session, she sits in the debriefing room looking defeated. Reaper 2 sits across from her. "What's wrong?" "I saved 312 people, Ava says quietly. "But today I couldn't even land a Cessna without bouncing 3 times. What if I'm not actually good at this? What if the emergency landing was just luck?" "It wasn't luck," Reaper 2 says firmly. "But you're right that emergency flying and proper flying are different skills. You were operating on pure training and desperation. Now you're learning to fly correctly, which means making all the normal mistakes that every pilot makes. Your mother bounced her first 20 landings. I bounced my first 50. Really? Really? Being good at flying doesn't mean never making mistakes. It means learning from every mistake, getting better every day, and never giving up. Your mother didn't become Ghost Rider overnight. She became Ghost Rider through 10,000 hours of practice, training, and dedication." Ava nods slowly. "Uncle James used to say the same thing. He said Mom wasn't born great, she made herself great." "Exactly. And so will you." Over the following months, Ava improves steadily. Her landings get smoother. Her control gets more precise. She learns not just to fly but to fly well, proper techniques, standard procedures, building a foundation that will serve her entire life. She makes friends, too. The initial skepticism from other students fades as they see her work ethic, her humility, her willingness to learn. She's not trying to be special, she's just trying to be good. A 17-year-old named Maya Chen, preparing for her Air Force Academy application, becomes something like a big sister. You know what I respect about you? Maya says one day during lunch. You could be all arrogant about what you did. You could walk around like you're better than everyone. But you don't. You're just a kid learning to fly. I am just a kid learning to fly, Ava says simply. No, Maya corrects. You're Ghost Rider. You just don't let it go to your head. The media attention gradually fades. The initial sensation of dead girl saves lives becomes old news. Ava is grateful for the relative anonymity. She gets to be a student, a trainee, a normal kid most of the time. But sometimes, the legend resurfaces. 6 months after the emergency landing, Ava is invited to speak at a ceremony honoring first responders and emergency personnel. She stands at a podium in front of hundreds of people, tiny in her formal dress uniform, and tells her story. I'm not a hero, she says, her young voice carrying through the microphone. I'm just someone who had knowledge when it was needed. My mother was the hero, she saved me by sacrificing herself. Colonel Sullivan was the hero, he spent 5 years teaching me because he believed in honoring her memory. The flight attendants were heroes, they trusted an 11-year-old because they had no other choice. The F-22 pilots were heroes, they guided me with patience and skill. She pauses, looking out at the audience. What I learned is that being prepared matters. Knowing things matters. When Uncle James was teaching me, I sometimes wondered why. I was just a kid. I'd never need to fly a real plane. But he taught me anyway, because he believed that knowledge is never wasted. That someday, somehow, it might matter. Her voice gets quieter. It mattered. 312 lives mattered. And I'm grateful that I was prepared, even though I never imagined I'd need to be. The applause is thunderous. After the ceremony, she's approached by a woman in her 40s with kind eyes. I was on that flight, the woman says. Seat 18D. I have 3 kids. I called them from the plane thinking I'd never see them again. And then you saved us. She hands Ava a photo, 3 children smiling at the camera, recent picture. That's Emma, Jacob, and Sophie. They exist today because you were brave. Thank you. Ava takes the photo, emotion welling up. This is what the landing meant. Not just numbers, 312 people, but individual lives. Children who still have their mother. People who got to go home. Thank you for showing me, she says quietly. The woman hugs her and walks away, and Ava stands there holding the photo of 3 children who almost lost their mother, understanding fully for the first time the weight and gift of what she did. 3 years later, Ava Morrison is 14 years old and has logged over 500 flight hours in various aircraft. She's no longer the youngest student at the Aviation Academy, a 10-year-old prodigy joined last year, but she's still exceptional. She stands in front of her mother's memorial at the Air Force Memorial again, but this time she's not alone. Colonel Reed is there, along with a dozen pilots who flew with her mother, and General Chen, who has taken personal interest in Ava's development. They're dedicating a new plaque, one that tells a different story than the original memorial suggested. It reads, Captain Sarah, Ghost Rider, Morrison F-22 Raptor pilot call sign, Ghost Rider in her final act, she saved her daughter's life. Her legacy lives on in the pilot her daughter became. The call sign Ghost Rider flies eternal. Ava touches the plaque, remembering the mother she barely got to know, the mother whose legacy she carries. She'd be proud, General Chen says. Not because you landed that plane in an emergency. But because of who you're becoming. A skilled pilot. A dedicated student. A good person. I still have so far to go, Ava says. We all do. That's what makes us pilots, we're always learning, always improving, always reaching for something higher. He hands her a folder. These are early acceptance materials for the Air Force Academy. You're still 4 years away from eligibility, but based on your performance, academic record, and demonstrated ability, you've been pre-selected. When you turn 18, if you still want this path, you have a guaranteed spot. Ava opens the folder, sees the Air Force Academy crest, sees the word pre-selected stamped across her file. She thinks about her mother, who wanted to share her love of flying. She thinks about Uncle James, who spent his final years ensuring that love didn't die with her mother. She thinks about that day at 38,000 feet when impossible became necessary. I want it, she says. I want to fly. Really fly. The way Mom did. Then that's what we'll prepare you for, General Chen says. Ghost Rider isn't just a call sign anymore. It's a legacy. And you're carrying it forward. Colonel Reed puts his hand on her shoulder. Your mother used to say something before every mission. She'd check her aircraft, run through her pre-flight, and then she'd say, let's go make some sky. Ava smiles. Uncle James taught me that phrase. He said it was Mom's way of saying flying isn't just about the aircraft, it's about the freedom, the possibility, the infinite sky. That's right, Reed says. So, Ava Morrison, future Ghost Rider, are you ready to make some sky? Ava looks up at the memorial spires reaching toward the clouds, at the sky her mother loved, at the infinite possibility ahead. Yes, sir, she says. Let's go make some sky. 5 years after that day in the middle seat of Flight 892, Ava Morrison stands on the tarmac at Nellis Air Force Base. She's 16 now, tall enough to reach the pedals without adjustment, strong enough to handle G-forces, skilled enough to have soloed in multiple aircraft types. Today is different. Today, she's getting a familiarization flight in an F-22 Raptor, the same type of aircraft her mother flew, the pinnacle of fighter technology. The pilot accompanying her is Reaper 2, now a full colonel, who has guided her every step of the way from that terrifying emergency landing to this moment. She approaches the F-22, and without thinking, without planning, her hand reaches out to touch the left wing. She whispers, "Fly safe, come home." Then her finger traces a figure 8 in the air, infinity. Reaper 2 watches with tears in his eyes. "She's in you," he says quietly. "Every bit of her." They climb into the cockpit, Ava in the back seat, not flying today, just experiencing. The canopy closes. The engines spool up with a scream of power that vibrates through her entire body. And then they're moving, accelerating, the runway blurring past. The nose lifts. The ground falls away. They're flying. At 40,000 feet, with the earth curved below and the sky deep blue above, Reaper 2's voice comes through the intercom. "How does it feel?" Ava looks out at the impossible view, feeling the power of the aircraft, understanding what her mother loved so much. "Like coming home," she says. "Your mother said the same thing the first time she flew one of these. She said the sky was home." They fly for an hour, not combat maneuvers, just flight. Beautiful, pure flight. The way humans were never meant to fly but learned to anyway. The way her mother flew. The way Ava will fly. When they land, there's a small group waiting. Other F-22 pilots. Veterans who flew with Ghost Rider. General Chen, who has followed Ava's progress like a proud grandfather. And standing slightly apart, a news crew. Because some stories don't fade. Some stories live forever. The reporter approaches as Ava removes her helmet. "Ava Morrison, 5 years ago you saved 312 lives. Today you flew in an F-22 for the first time. How does it feel to follow in your mother's footsteps?" Ava considers the question. She's learned to handle media with grace, to speak truthfully without bragging, to honor her mother without living in her shadow. "My mother didn't want me to follow in her footsteps," Ava says. "She wanted me to fly my own path. But she taught me that flying isn't just about the aircraft, it's about courage, skill, and serving something bigger than yourself. That's what I'm learning. That's what Ghost Rider really means." "Do you plan to become a fighter pilot like her?" "I plan to become the best pilot I can be," Ava says. "If that leads me to fighters, great. If it leads me somewhere else, that's great too. What matters is that I honor her by being excellent at whatever I do. The reporter smiles. 5 years ago, you were declared dead. Today, you're very much alive and pursuing your mother's legacy. What would you say to people facing impossible situations? Ava thinks about that moment in seat 14C, when she had to choose between hiding and acting. She thinks about climbing into that captain's seat, terrified but certain. She thinks about her mother, making the impossible choice to save her daughter. I'd say that impossible is just another word for, nobody's done it yet, she says. My mother did impossible things every time she flew. Uncle James did an impossible thing by keeping me safe and trained for 5 years. I did an impossible thing landing that plane. But none of it felt impossible in the moment, it just felt necessary. She looks directly at the camera. So if you're facing something impossible, ask yourself, is it really impossible, or just necessary? Because if it's necessary, if lives depend on it, if it matters enough, then you find a way. You do what needs to be done. The interview ends. The cameras turn off. The reporter thanks her and leaves. Ava stands on the tarmac, looking at the F-22 that brought her home, at the sky where her mother lived, at the future stretching